I signed the deal. I trusted the handshake. I believed the security. Then one phone call about a driver I barely competed against changed the way people looked at my future, and I did not even see it coming. Because in NASCAR, the moment you think you are safe is exactly the moment you are not. In August 2025, Trackhouse Racing signed Shane Van Gisbergen to a multi-year contract extension. The announcement was framed as loyalty rewarded. A Supercars champion who had been rebuilt into a Cup Series weapon finally locked into a long-term home. There was no public dispute, no explosive statement, no leaked tension between driver and organization. That silence was the strangest part of the entire situation. The scariest part was not a scandal. It was quiet. NASCAR rarely works that simply, and as the calendar moved forward, a future that once felt comfortably distant suddenly felt closer than anyone at Trackhouse wanted to admit. Nothing had changed on paper. Everything had changed underneath it. If you're new here, this channel, NASCAR Insider TV, breaks down exactly these kinds of stories, the ones hiding underneath the official press releases. We are closing in on 1,500 subscribers, and if you want to be part of that milestone, hitting subscribe right now helps this channel keep digging into stories like this one. Now, back to what actually happened. The reveal came fast. Connor Zillish, the prospect Trackhouse Racing had poured years of development into, signed a multi-year deal with Hendrick Motorsports, effective 2028, taking over the number 48 car. This was not simply a story about one driver leaving. It was a story about what his departure exposed. Ross Chastain and Shane Van Gisbergen are both entering the final year of their current contracts in 2027. Stack those facts together, and Trackhouse Racing faces a scenario where it could enter 2028 with 0 of its 3 cornerstone drivers still under contract. 1 departure, 2 expiring contracts, and a countdown that just started ticking. To understand why this matters so much, you have to understand what Van Gisbergen was originally dismissed as. Early in his Cup Series transition, he was labeled a road course specialist, a gimmick, a one-trick pony who could win on twisty layouts but had no business competing on ovals. That label is exactly what makes the next part of this story so significant. NASCAR's own reporting has highlighted Van Gisbergen's growth on oval tracks, moving well beyond the road course-only reputation that followed him into the sport. He has described learning the flow of NASCAR races, qualifying stronger and staying closer to the front instead of fading late in runs. Ahead of New Hampshire, Speed Cafe reported that Van Gisbergen had begun understanding how short ovals allow him to influence the car's performance through braking, brake bias, gearing, and line choice, skills that go far beyond road course instinct alone. Then came the moment that shifted the entire conversation. Van Gisbergen posted a top 5 finish at an oval that had historically been considered his weakest surface, while teammates in equally competitive equipment finished at the back of the field. The reaction across the NASCAR community was immediate disbelief turning into vindication. Fans who had spent months calling him a gimmick were now openly admitting they had misjudged him. There was genuine shock that a driver labeled a road course merchant was now dragging an underpowered Trackhouse car into contention on tracks he was never supposed to compete on. Adding to the moment, the finishing order for that race was later revised, with Van Gisbergen upgraded to 5th place, a twist within a twist, as even NASCAR's own scoring process could not immediately keep pace with how competitive he had become. That single stretch of races became the moment the wider fan base stopped debating his ceiling and started acknowledging it as real. The online conversation around Van Gisbergen changed almost overnight. Threads that once mocked his oval performances turned into breakdowns of his braking technique and his car placement through traffic. People who had written him off just months earlier were now comparing his trajectory to drivers who took years longer to find that same level of comfort on ovals. It was not one race that changed the perception. It was the accumulation of small, consistent signs that the label attached to him no longer matched what was happening on track every weekend. That shift produces one central idea. A driver who is elite on road courses has value. A driver who is elite on road courses and increasingly competitive on ovals has something else entirely: leverage. That single word changes the entire tone of this story, turning it from a feel-good comeback narrative into a business problem for Trackhouse Racing. Because Hendrick Motorsports already showed exactly how it operates. The Zillish signing was not just Trackhouse losing a prospect, it was proof that elite organizations are willing to lock down talent years before existing contracts even expire. If Hendrick could see Zillish's potential before Trackhouse had even finished developing him, the uncomfortable question becomes what happens once other organizations start watching Van Gisbergen with that same level of attention. Reporting around the current NASCAR silly season has suggested that both Chastain and Van Gisbergen could have opportunities elsewhere in the sport, with Chastain reportedly drawing interest from multiple organizations. Silly season speculation in NASCAR rarely needs an official statement to gain momentum. It builds through scheduling patterns, through which drivers are seen talking to which team owners, and through contract timelines that reporters track closely every season. Van Gisbergen and Chastain both fit that pattern this year, whether or not either driver has made any private decision about their future. There is no confirmed dispute, no verified announcement that Van Gisbergen wants to leave Trackhouse. But the absence of a problem has never stopped NASCAR's silly season from imagining one. And what Trackhouse stands to lose is not just a competitive driver, it is a global storyline. An Australian supercars champion with an international fan base and sponsor credibility that extends well beyond the United States. The more valuable Van Gisbergen becomes, the more dangerous it becomes for Trackhouse to lose control of that narrative. Every organization in the garage understands what an international driver brings beyond lap times. Sponsorship reach into new markets, media attention outside the traditional NASCAR fan base, and a built-in storyline that networks and broadcasters actively want to promote. Those are not small factors when contract negotiations begin. They are exactly the kind of leverage that turns a routine contract renewal into a bidding situation that extends well past a single team's boardroom. Before we get into how Trackhouse is trying to handle this, if you are finding this breakdown useful, drop a comment with your take on where you think Van Gisbergen ends up, and share this video with another NASCAR fan who has been following the Trackhouse situation. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Consider what Trackhouse actually built its identity around. This was supposed to be the organization that proved a small team could develop stars from the ground up, instead of simply buying proven talent from bigger programs. Van Gisbergen was part of that experiment. So was Zillish. Losing Zillish to Hendrick Motorsports does not just cost Trackhouse a future driver, it costs the organization a piece of the story it had been telling sponsors, fans, and the broader garage about what kind of team it was building. That is why this situation carries weight far beyond one contract or one silly season rumor. It touches the entire model Trackhouse Racing has used to justify its rapid rise in the sport. This leaves Trackhouse Racing facing an impossible balancing act. Retain Van Gisbergen. Retain Chastain, rebuild around the development pipeline that just lost its top prospect, or gamble on potentially losing multiple stars at once entering 2028. Do you prioritize experience? Do you prioritize upside? Do you spend to keep both? Or do you let the market decide? Trackhouse owner Justin Marks had previously suggested that 2028 felt too distant to worry about. A comment that aged quickly once Zillish's move to Hendrick made that same year feel suddenly urgent. This is a countdown clock Trackhouse did not choose to start, and it is running regardless of what the organization says publicly. There is no war, no leaked ultimatum, no confirmed goodbye, but there does not need to be one, because the chessboard has already started moving. And once the pieces start moving, the safest seat in the garage can become the most closely watched one in the entire sport. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe to NASCAR Insider TV as we push toward 1,500 subscribers. There is a lot more of this Trackhouse story still unfolding.